This is Transqat. What is Transqat? Transqat is a safe space. It's a place for respectful conversations about transgender issues. It's a place for queer people to come tell their stories. I'm host Clare McCarthy. Welcome to Transqat. Tony Ferraiolo is no stranger to listeners of this podcast. He was my first guest back in August of 2022, and I count myself fortunate to have collaborated with him on several projects since then. He has founded a number of support groups for trans and non-binary youth. He's the co-founder of the Jim Collins Fund, which supports gender-affirming care for trans youth. Tony was the subject of the 2013 documentary, A Self-Made Man, and you can check out episode 29 for excerpts from the 10th anniversary screening of that film. He's published 2 volumes and is working on the 3rd of Artistic Expressions of Transgender Youth. Tony is currently the Director of Youth and Family Programming at Healthcare Advocates International. When he told me that he was working on a memoir, essentially I begged him to come back on the show to talk about it. Now, fair warning, finding my way out of the darkness goes to some dark places. We'll be talking about sexual abuse, substance abuse, and trauma. To be honest, it was a struggle for me to remain objective about terrible things happening to somebody I respect. But the book is very clearly written in Tony's voice, which means it never loses focus on compassion and transformation. So, Tony, I was thinking, since we're going to be talking about some pretty heavy subjects here, some things that might be challenging for some of the listeners, I thought maybe if you sort of could put together a convocation, something that puts us in the right frame of mind.
You know, listen, when I was writing the book and I realized that I had to put a content warning at the beginning of your book, I was like, shit, my journey was really freaking hard, right? But I think it's important for the people who are going to be reading the book to know that if it gets too hard for them, because I talk about suicidal ideations, I talk about self-harm and sexual abuse and sexual violence, and if it gets too hard, put the book down and take care of yourself and come back to it. You know, I think it's super important. But I also want the listeners and hopefully the readers to know is that in order for me to see the light, I had to go through the darkness. You know, duality is a big deal. You know, we wouldn't appreciate sunny days if it was sunny all the time, right? So, you know, we wouldn't appreciate happiness if we were happy all the time. So duality sometimes, and this is a heavy book, I know, but it really, writing it was challenging, and I took breaks. I had to take breaks.
How long did it take you all told?
Probably almost 3 years. And it's not a long book. That was the biggest hurdle that I had to get over, was it didn't have to be War and Peace, you know? And I started adding content just to make it longer, and they were like, don't do that. But I think that the purpose of me writing this was to really let people know that they're not alone in the suffering, and that healing is absolutely possible.
And what comes across very, very clearly, and we should just say, and I am holding the very first copy of this in my grubby mitts. This book is entitled Finding My Way Out of the Darkness, How I Found Self-Love and Acceptance by Tony Ferraiolo, longtime friend of the show.
Yes.
You revisit wounds is really the only way, the word that I came away with.
Yeah, because, you know, when we think about past traumas, the emotional pain comes up just like it was the same day it happened. I think I would have gotten the book done in a very much shorter period of time if I just wrote about my happiness. But I had to take breaks, and you know, Publisher Purpose is my publisher, and Jen Grace is a very good friend of mine, and we have like a writing coach you work with, and I, as a life coach, I'm making sure that the writing coach was okay.
Right.
Because, you know, I'm talking to her about what I'm putting in the book, and her face is dropping, like, what? And in some instances through the book, I will go to a lighter, like, hey, listen, now that I think back on that, this is what it's like. But it is a heavy read, I think.
It is. And you do sort of shift in and out of, you're telling your stories, but then you do occasionally address the reader directly. Hey, you should remember that, or don't worry, I learned this from this incident.
Yeah.
And I thought that was effective, because it really, I mean, maybe it's just because I know you, but
Yeah.
it did feel like I was sitting in the room with you. And as you were telling me your story, you were sort of reaching across the table and going, no, it's okay.
Yeah, because, a Self-Made Man documentary was about my life as an advocate, but not too many people know about this. And it took some thinking to say, listen, if you're going to do it, just do it. Don't hold anything back. And, some of the stuff that I've done, I don't hold regrets, but I wish I didn't do that, if that made sense. Like all the stuff about drugs and I was not a kind person.
I definitely want to come back to that, because I think that was an exceptionally important part to this. But let's just lay some groundwork here first. One of the things that jumps out at me almost immediately is that all throughout the early chapters, when you're describing these really awful situations you were in as a kid, the feeling of being trapped. As I read your book, it felt claustrophobic. And maybe it's just because, we're both trans and we have some experiences that are similar, but I felt trapped. And as soon as I realized that that's what I was feeling, I remembered the things that you were telling me during your first appearance on the show, which is that is exactly what all these kids you work with feel like. When you start talking to them on the psych ward, they're always expressing, I have no options. I feel trapped. Yeah. And you are able to cut through that with them. And I think this shows how that is so important.
Yeah, and a lot of people are like, I think we talked about this before, but they're like, oh my God, you're like the dog whisperer for kids. And it's like, no. I just tell them what I needed to hear when I was in their situation, and there was nobody there to say it to me. And after reading the book, I was in a lot of pain for many, many years. And just hoping that somebody would say, I mentioned this a couple of times in the book, not what's wrong with them, what's happening to them. What is happening to this child?
And that's a really important distinction in questions.
Yeah.
Because it colors the approach entirely differently, is what is this person going through? I don't necessarily want to lead you back through those incidents.
I have to read it. I read the book like 7 times.
Yeah. But in terms of what we're talking about when you were a kid, give folks an idea of what we're talking about. Yeah,
I never knew what it felt like to be safe and loved at home forever. And as a kid, you accept that because you don't know anything different. You know what I mean? Like, you don't know anything different.
This is the way it is.
This is the way it is. This is the way love is.
Yeah.
This is what, because I tell parents all the time, you teach your children what it's like to feel love and how to be loved. And if you're abusing your child or you're neglecting them, then when they grow up and they're in a relationship, that's going to feel like love to them. So you're kind of setting the tone here. And I've been in plenty of relationships where I was abused and it felt right.
Because that's
what I was used to. For those of us who have been through a lot of trauma and abuse, when we start stepping out of that and into our own reality, a lot of times happiness feels so fucking uncomfortable that we sabotage our lives. This doesn't feel right. I'd rather be sad, depressed, and anxious because at least I know how that feels.
Before I came out, and this sounds like a joke, but before I came out, I used to refer to it as the H word. I wouldn't even say it. People would ask, you've got a new job. You must be really happy. And my brain would be going, I don't even know what that means. Yeah. Happy is not on the menu, man.
Yeah, I feel that because Jim Collins was a very good therapist, and he passed away, and that's how the Jim Collins Foundation I co-founded was named after him. But I had top surgery, and I went back to see him a couple weeks later, and I was sitting there. He goes, "Well, how did it go?" He was all excited. How did it go? I was like, "I said it's good, it's done." And he was like, "What?" He says, "Aren't you excited?" He says, "Tony, I just want to point something out. You don't get excited about anything. Nothing brings you like, oh my God, I can't believe it." Now, yesterday, no lie, at 6:45, this book came and UPS delivered this book. I've never seen the book in a hardcover. I've never seen it in a paperback. You'd think I would have opened this and did a happy dance around my apartment and screamed. I didn't. I was like, oh, okay, And then I went up to bed last night and I was laying there. I was like, wait a minute, this is a big deal.
I should commemorate this somehow.
It was so freaking delayed. It was so delayed. So then this morning when I got up, I was holding it, I was hugging it, I was feeling it. I was like, oh my God, it's done. It's like this is it. Now what's next? And now I gotta like stop doing that too.
There is something just glorious about holding this hardcover in your hands. Your name is right there.
I know. And we designed it. I designed it so that if you people will notice it when they get the book. But this image at the beginning of the path goes up the path as the chapters go along.
Oh, so that was missing from mine.
It was missing from yours, yeah.
Yeah.
And then the QR codes, I think, are so cool. So there's QR codes in the book that lead you to an original art piece. I'm an artist, and the way I really stepped away from self-harm was I started creating art. But there's some from my early days, like when I was a teenager and even younger. There's 2 drawings in there, pencil drawings that I drew that are horrifying. It was a good choice to do the QR codes. I like the idea that people can interact with my artwork, not just like read the story, but see the story.
Yeah, well, I mean, that from your 2 volumes of
artistic
kids
expressions.
Art, that images and colors can express so much more than words sometimes, particularly for those kids who feel trapped, that they don't have a way to get those words out.
Yeah, those books are powerful. 3rd one's coming out. That's the next project because it's almost done. But
fantastic.
I wanted to finish the memoir first.
Going no further into it than you want to, the abuse that happened with your next door neighbor.
Yeah.
In whatever detail you want, give us a sense of what happened.
Yeah, so it was a friend of my father's. We just happened to buy the house next door to him. We went over there one night as a family just to, it was like welcome to the neighborhood type of thing. He was a nice guy. He had a wife, 2 kids. And, he asked my twin and I, who's the funniest? And I raised my hand. I was like, I am. I'm proud of that because I am funnier than him. He might deny that, but that's too freaking bad. So a few days later, he called my father and asked my father if he would send me over to help him with a project. And that's when the sexual abuse started. But the hard part of that was if he called and I didn't go and refused to go, then I would be punished at home.
For disrespecting your elders.
Yeah. And then if I went, I was sexually abused. And I got to tell you something, Claire, for many, many years, I up until about maybe 5-6 years ago, when I chose to go, I felt like maybe I wanted it for years. And then one day I just was sitting and meditating on this. And I said, wait a minute, Tony, that was self-care. Even at that young of an age, you made the decision of what you can emotionally handle that day. And when I said that, it just brought such light to my heart that even though the adults around me in that time of my life, nobody was freaking protecting me, I knew to protect myself emotionally, even though I didn't know I was doing that, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and even if to an outside observer that looked like putting yourself in harm's way rather than protecting yourself, I completely understand what you're saying. Yeah.
And I never felt really safe. This is something because, I left the house years later, but I never returned to that area. I never talked to that family again, but yet I sometimes thought that he would find me and kill me because he said, if you tell anybody, I'll kill you. Showed me a gun. He had a gun to my head once, but until he died, I didn't feel safe.
And how long ago was that he died?
He probably passed away maybe 15 years ago. Yeah. I
mean, that kind of changes the recovery, right? Once he's out of the picture, and that even if it's an irrational fear, that fear
because I was like, does he even know? He would never. Let me tell you something. If he would never recognize me if he walked by me.
Right.
The fear of being killed is something that really is a big fear of mine. It is. It because in the book I talk about that, about my father, and I thought he was going to shoot me, and I slept in a closet for a while. That was the reality of my life. So even today, if something major should happen, if I get bad comments and stuff, I really sometimes say, oh my God, is somebody going to kill me? And I have full-blown anxiety over it. Sometimes I always give myself permission to have those anxiety attacks because I just feel like that's what my body needs.
It takes a long time to get to that level of awareness, though, because when you're in it, in panic attacks, I've had them too, they're all encompassing. There is nothing else in that moment, but you're locked in your head.
Yeah, it's something because when I'm having an anxiety attack, I can't see it from the outside in. But when I'm sitting with a kid who's having a full-blown anxiety attack, I can't really see it because I'm in it to try to bring them to a safer emotional space. But I went to see the movie Inside Out too. And I'm going to tell you something, all you people, I'm going to plug this movie.
Okay.
Anxiety comes in.
Yes.
Now, that's one of the new characters. And at the end, they're having an anxiety attack, and they portray that so well The person I was with, they said they almost texted me saying, "Are you okay?" Because I was crying. It was amazing, and how the other emotion comforted, saying, "Feel your hands on the handle," and then really, it was amazingly done. But watching that did something to me. Like watching that said, "Wow, like that's exactly how I feel."
Yeah.
And I know the steps to, like, I used to light a candle and focus on the flame. That's how I used to deal with it for years and years and years. But still, sometimes with all the tools I have and all the Tara Brach workshops I've gone to, sometimes the anxiety attack just needs to happen.
Yeah.
And I just need to allow it.
When you're young, you do have the feeling that this isn't going to pass.
Yeah.
And I'm going to be, this is my new reality.
Yeah.
The same way you were talking about the reality of your family life.
Yeah.
That's what it is. One of the things I wanted to ask you about that we want to be careful about with this book, let me put it this way.
Okay.
When I came out, I spent a summer meeting with each of my siblings, and all of them at the time were married. So I would sit down with each sib and the spouse, and I would explain it and ask questions. Go ahead. What can I help you with? And one of the spouses said to me, "Well, what do you think happened to you when you were a kid that made you this way?" And I was taken aback by the ignorance of that.
Yeah.
But that is one of the stereotypical pieces of information, that the only way you could end up confused about your gender is if you suffered some sort of trauma in the past. So for people reading this, how do you distinguish between, I guess, causation and correlation is what I'm asking, right?
Well, I know a lot of people who haven't suffered trauma that are trans. I know a lot of people who have grown up in loving homes and their families accepted them, and and they're trans. It is a very big misconception. Listen, I knew I was a boy before any of the sexual abuse happened. I mean, I was 5 when I said to my mother, I'm a boy. What are you doing? Why can't I take my shirt off outside, type of thing. But yeah, that's
you should be able to do that at 5, by the way.
Yeah,
you should
really.
be able
does it really matter, right? But, Italian mothers, you're not supposed to do that. It's funny because a friend of mine says, every time I call you, we FaceTime, every time I call you, you're not wearing a shirt. It's like, I don't. That's the way it is. Since my top surgery, it's like, I will not wear a shirt unless I absolutely have to. Okay, that's it.
Thank you for wearing a shirt here.
You're welcome.
In the library.
I figured the library wouldn't let me in without a shirt.
They would have frowned.
They would have frowned for sure. But that's my answer to that. Is there's plenty of people who haven't experienced any trauma in their lives and they're trans. Your gender identity is in your brain. And
it's also part of an ingrained supposition in the medical profession that, okay, we need to cure that.
Yeah.
And for the longest time, people looked at us and said, okay, well, with the best of intentions of being humane, what do we need to do to fix you?
Yeah, and it's something because transitioning fixed me.
Me too.
If you want to use that term, fixed. My life began when I was able to be Tony and just walk out of my house and not worry about hiding. How that feels.
Oh, yeah.
And it can bring us to tears.
Hi, folks. For the first 2 years of Transqat, I focused on 2 goals: create quality conversations and maintain a consistent schedule. I've done that. Now I need to turn some of the focus to money. I have no illusions about this show turning a profit. That's for podcasts with a large organization behind them. My goal is simply to make Transqat pay for itself. You get to access the show for free, and it's important to me that this always be the case. But you might not know that there are fees, subscriptions, equipment, and travel costs behind the production. How can you help? Well, on the support menu at transqat.com, select Donate, then hit the PayPal Donate button. You can make it a one-time thing, or you can set up a monthly or even yearly recurring donation. Also on the support menu is an option to sponsor. Your business or organization can sponsor one or a block of episodes in exchange for a 30-second ad and a social media mention. Details are on the site. Listeners, if you know of a business or group that might be a good fit, let me know so I can reach out. Or maybe you could do some of the legwork and ask the next time you're there. If this show has value to you, if you support civil discourse around trans and queer issues, support the show. And as the Scottish woman at the end credits says,
please consider supporting our mission with your monies. Any monkeys will be gratefully received as well.
This also is a sensitive question,
No,
so
go
forgive me, but you were saying you told your mom at 5, I'm a boy.
Yeah.
In the book, somewhere early on, you wrote a sentence that I didn't mark, but it essentially at least suggested the possibility that some of this sexual abuse was punitive for being butch.
Yeah. It was like, it was the weirdest thing for me because I wasn't like, listen, I wasn't raised in a family where they sat down and they talked about sexual stuff, or at least like, hey, listen, you're going to get your period. I mean, nothing was talked about. So everything was kind of like I had to figure it out in my head. And at that age, so I didn't, like when I was being sexually abused, I talk about the driving school instructor. All right. I was like, I felt, and the guy at my first job, it was like, why is everybody abusing me sexually? And I was like, well, why are they can't be attracted? I'm such a butch. I mean, I told you, when I transitioned, nobody was like, oh my God. Everybody's like,
uh-huh.
Yeah, okay, yeah, that makes sense. But anyway, I just wanted one person to be shocked. But anyway,
I could act shocked if you wanted.
Can you next time?
Okay, yeah, we'll work
I'm
on
trans.
it. What?
Yeah.
Wait.
You can't even do it. Claire,
give me time to rehearse.
Stick to podcasting.
Okay, fine.
No, it was like, that's what was in my head. Like, how can they be attracted to me? I'm not a pretty girl. I'm a butch dyke, really. Then when I realized that it was violence, it wasn't had anything to do with being attracted to somebody. It was all about control. And that kind of was like, oh, okay, now it makes sense. Because I always thought, like, I can't tell you how many times I said to myself, over the years, why was I even born? Why am I getting abused? All this is why is it happening to me? Not to go into victim energy, but Jesus Christ, enough. I mean, one person can't be like one aspect of my life. There was no place that I can physically go or be where I felt safe and I felt like I belonged.
At some point growing up, you saw a TV show that I've never heard of before. A documentary, I think, called Gender Knots.
Yeah, Gender Knots.
Never heard of that before.
Yeah. A friend of mine, Jean Dolan, she was amazing. She still is amazing, but she doesn't live around here anymore. She was the lead singer of the band Vertical Smile, my band, when I was a lesbian, identified as a lesbian. And wise person, who knew me before I knew who I was. And I was dating somebody. We were having Jean and her wife over, and Jean walks in. We didn't have a plan to do anything that night. We're just gonna hang out, have a couple of drinks. And she walks in with a bag of VCR tapes. That's how I'm aging.
VHS
myself.
Tapes.
For those of you who don't know, look it up, Google it. And one of them was Gender Knots. And she put it in the VCR, and I talk about that scene with those guys on the beach, and he opens up his shirt and says, I had my top surgery, and I was like, I am trans. It was definitely an aha moment. Then it was like a oh shit moment right after that, right?
Sure.
Like, okay, now what? Because this is what I tell people all the time. When people are struggling and like really with their identity, am I not? Am I non-binary? Am I trans? Am I gender? Whatever it is. They're pretty not safe, but they're safer than when they say, oh, I am, and then they feel stuck. Now that I know who I am, how can I live a life and not be who I am? That's the dangerous thing, right? We had a full circle moment at group on last Saturday. I'll tell you what happened. It was 16 years that I started those groups. I started the group in August of 2008, and this member, Hayes, who was 5 when he started, is 17 now, and he came to group, and then we had a new 5-year-old start. The mom contacts me, says, I hear you have this group. So I set up a Zoom call. I was like, yeah, I said, name and pronoun. And she was like, oh, well, it's funny because he was like, I want a new name. And she says, yeah, you can, what do you want to be called? And he said, Brownie. And she was like, Brownie? He was like, yeah, I love brownies, mommy. But they settled on Matthew. But anyway, so Matthew comes in and Hayes comes in. And typically we have the teen group separate, but we were doing a lot of art projects. So the teens are like, can we make bracelets? So they're sitting there. And Matthew goes over and sits with the teenagers. Now, Hayes and Matthew are having a conversation that I'm overhearing. I didn't hear what Matthew said first, but Hayes says, you are a boy. Look at me. They thought I was a girl, too. Do I look like a boy? And Matthew was like, yeah. He goes, well, you look like a boy. And this big smile came on this kid's face. And I remember saying that to Hayes when he was 5. I'm like almost to the word. Look at me. Do I look like a boy? Yeah. Well, so do you.
Yeah.
Right. It was such a full circle moment. That's my legacy, is passing that on, seeing these kids that, now, will Matthew be free from anxiety or no? Probably not. My hope is that maybe, but probably not. But he has a place to go now. And listen, I'm old. I'm fun, but I'm old, okay? And they need to see closer age, like peer-to-peer is so important, right? So I love when the teenagers come into the art group and kind of like interact.
Well, it teaches, in that moment, it teaches the younger kid a strategy. People exist out there who will see me. And so when I'm feeling anxious, when I'm feeling shitty, when I'm feeling alone, I could make an effort to get myself to one or two of those people. It's a strategy for dealing with things as you go along.
What warmed my heart was at the end, Matthew came up to me and said, "Can I come here every day? Is this every day?" And I said, "Well, not really." I said, "It's once a month, not every day." And I was like, "No, not every." I'm like, and my heart almost broke, But yeah, I just thought he had such a good time.
Obviously, you've taken all this trauma and you've turned it into a career, into a life of giving to queer youth, to trans youth. But before you got there, and this was probably the part of the book that leapt out at me the most as being really brave to talk about, is the old maxim that hurt people.
Yeah.
And you are incredibly candid about that in your book, that you were an asshole.
That was an asshole. And sometimes that, I don't think you ever lose that. I think it's just like, it goes dormant, but sometimes that asshole comes out sometimes. So be careful, Claire. Be careful.
I'm sorry.
No,
I'm sorry. Let me rethink that. I like the visual of the sleeping asshole inside you. Don't wake it up.
Don't wake it up. Shit, it's there. Oh my God. Yeah, be careful. Yeah, I was, but that was a kid in pain.
Yeah.
Anger is a fueled emotion. It's typically caused by sad, fairness, or frustration. But for me, it was sadness and fear. That's what I lived in.
Yeah.
So I took it out on people that were emotionally weaker than me.
So you would sense when somebody had a vulnerability and go for it.
I'd go for it.
Yeah.
I'd go for it. And it's funny because when I talk about Carol Evans, my gym teacher, and I met with her, and such a sweetheart, and surprised she even wants to look at me after I put that person through. But she said, you always stood up for the underdog loudly, but and I do not remember being kind to people. I do not remember that.
That's an interesting mix, standing up for marginalized folks, but at the same time you're
being angry about
you're the oppressor as well.
Yeah. Oh yeah, and that's why I don't remember when people say, "Oh yeah, you were such a nice person." I don't remember that. I do not remember being nice.
What form did that take? I'm going to use the word bullying. I'm not sure that's a word I really like.
I was unkind. I don't, even when I'm like, I just left a school. I'm speaking to all their students about kindness, not about LGBTQ stuff, but just pure kindness. And when I'm talking to students, I never use the word bullying. I always use being unkind, because I think bullying just makes everybody's ears close. But I was a bully. Back then we used that word, and that's what I was. I was bullied so bad that I became a bully. It was a survival thing for sure. And that's what I'm saying, like, when I'm training schools, it's like when you see somebody that's that angry, a student that's that angry, reach out to them. I had the opportunity to train every single educator and administrator at North Branford School District, and that's where I went to school. And I said to them, when I was a student here, nobody asked me, what's happening? What's going on with you?
Them focused on the behavior.
Yeah. And there's a part in the book where I talk about going back, and they're saying to Carol, listen, I just want to tell you, I'm so sorry about what I did. And she says, you already apologized to me, Tony. When she said that, I remember feeling like so emotional about it. I said, I did. And she says, yeah, when you went to high school, you came back and you said your therapist thought I should know why.
In that moment, when you would be in the act of being unkind to someone, did it feel good? Was there an element of shame?
Always shame. It never felt good. I mean, I did it. I don't even, I wish I could sit here and say the reason why I did it, but I don't even know why I did it. It definitely was shame. And it's just like now, we all have being kind and being unkind is a choice. I recently had something happen to me with a friend of mine that was pretty shitty. And I had to stop for a minute and think about how I was going to handle this. And they were in pain. And that's why what's happening is happening. I could have said, screw you. I don't just get out of my life. I don't want to see you again, because that was my first instinct, because our brains are wired to protect us. But I paused and I said to them, listen, you're suffering here. There's no shame or blame or anything. We can move on from this, but I just need some time. I walked away from that conversation not feeling like I betrayed my core values, because my core values is kindness. So when we have the opportunity to stop and pause and choose the kindest way to say something to somebody, you will walk away from that conversation feeling like $1 million, because you're honoring who you are. But when I was younger, I didn't learn that. I didn't think I had any value. I was never told that I had any value.
Well, in order to be able to do strategies like that, you have to see a future. You have to be able to see a long enough range to say, okay, we're going to keep working on this friendship. I'm going to take some time to process what's happening now. And you have to be able to take the long view. Yeah. But when you are closeted, when you are in an abusive situation, you can only focus on the present.
Yeah.
There is no future.
Yeah.
And so therefore you're not able to adopt strategies that would acknowledge there's a future.
Because in that situation, like most of my life, I was surviving life. I wasn't living life.
Yeah.
That's what happens when you're surviving. Listen, when you're in survival mode, you don't give a shit what's happening. I mean, you don't care what you have to do to survive that day. You just do it.
One of the strategies that you talk about that you use is that in situations that are potentially confrontational, you try really hard to react small as opposed to react big. There's a sort of stereotypical masculine approach to conflict where you puff up your chest and you oppose. And you have said repeatedly that you try to be small in that moment. Talk a little bit about what that is.
If I can't be kind in a situation where somebody's either attacking me or it's just a really shitty situation to be in, then I get small. I'd rather not say anything and sit back than say something or do something that I'm going to regret, because I'm not a mean person, even though I was told that I was. And we become who people tell us we are.
Yeah.
A lot of people do, and once you wake up from that and you realize, I don't know if I said this in the book, but if I listened to every single person who told me they knew me better than I knew myself, I'd be an Italian woman cooking pasta for my 3 kids every Sunday. I mean, let's be real. Yeah. As trans people tell us we're not who we are all the time.
Yeah.
In order for me to stay within my values and to walk away from situations feeling good about my part of it, because that's the only thing I have control over, is how I say something and what I say to somebody. I don't have control over what they're gonna say to me and how they're gonna take what I say. But my role in a conversation is to always speak the truth and be kind. And is it necessary? Because is it necessary not for me to say it? Is it necessary for you to hear it? Am I telling you something that is going to cause you pain and you don't even need to know about it, So is it necessary, I think, is it true, is it kind, is it necessary? Isn't necessary is the thing that people need to work on. Because sometimes we're just saying stuff to push our agenda or just get shit off our chest,
Yeah. Let me ask you to apply those 3 questions to your book. It's true.
The book is true.
Yeah, we can just resolve that right now. Is it kind? Is it necessary?
Yeah, it's definitely kind. Because I could have, and I'm going to be, when I sit with you, Claire, I just feel like I can be totally straightforward. I could have slammed people so hard, but that's not the purpose of the book. The purpose of the book wasn't to throw shame or blame on people. The purpose of the book was to really help people know that if I came from that and I was able to heal and become who I am today, and I'm not telling you every day I'm skipping around a rainbow, that ain't happening. But I certainly have more good days than bad days. This book could have been a very finger-pointing, especially with a couple of ex-girlfriends I talk about in the book. Mm-hmm. I made sure that I used words that didn't make them feel like they should be shameful, because I really believe, and Claire, every day I have to remind myself of this, is that everybody is doing the best they can. Everybody, even if we don't agree with their views, even if we don't agree with how they're approaching life, they're doing the best they can. It's just like everybody's like, telling me, well, how can they not believe that? That's ridiculous. Well, listen, they not believe it as much as you believe it. Their views are as strong as our views are.
What you are raised in is what the world is until you educate yourself that there are other experiences out there. So
I do believe it's kind.
Is it necessary?
Absolutely, it's necessary. And I didn't write this book for the money, because authors don't make a lot of money on books. I wrote this book to
By the way, did you put money in the meter for your yacht when you sailed up?
No, I didn't. No, I didn't put the
because they check here.
Do they check?
Oh yeah.
No, but my Beamer is getting washed, so that's why I had to take the yacht. What? But no, listen, I don't park my yacht. The captain just drives it around.
Just circle around.
Yeah, he circles around.
Be back in an hour.
Then they're gonna make us lunch, so we'll have lunch on the yacht. But anyway,
can I have a ride home?
Sure, we'll drop you off. Is it necessary? Absolutely necessary. I'm hoping it gets into the hands of a reader who doesn't think they have the power to heal. That's important to me, because everybody does have the power to heal. Yeah. Everybody does have the power to tackle. Listen, I'm still healing. I don't think we ever stop. It's like, you transition. Everybody transitions in life. Every single person. If you never transition, you don't grow. So I'm hoping that this book feeds them so that they can grow. Like I said at the end of the book, remember that everything that's happened to you in your life, you have survived it. You have survived it. And so many times we say, oh my God, I can't believe that happened to me. And we go into like a victim poor me thing, which is fine. But then their next words say, wait a minute, I fucking survived that shit.
Yeah.
I'm a strong person.
I am, yeah.
I always refer to myself pre-transition as she was the one, until my therapist said to me one day, very matter-of-factly, by the way, said, well, wait a minute, wasn't that you? Oh my God, it was me. I was the one who was strong enough. And when you say it that way, the empowerment that it gives you is 20 times different, even more. I mean, it's night and day when I'm giving credit to somebody else.
Me again. One last thought about financial support. I am working on designing some Transqat merch. I'm hoping that will be available in early 2025. Maybe you're asking, Claire, what can I do besides giving financial support? So glad you asked. For each episode of Transqat, I put out 2 to 3 promotional social media posts. And at the moment, I'm on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, and LinkedIn. If each of you were to share these posts with your network of contacts, we could grow Transqat exponentially. The more downloads per month, the more appealing the show is to sponsors. Also, more listeners makes it a little bit easier to book guests with national or international renown. So help promote the show. Share my posts, comment on why you enjoy Transqat, encourage others to subscribe and share. Back to the show.
One of the dedications in the book is to my younger self. And, I didn't even think about doing it. And a friend of mine was like, why don't you write a dedication to your younger self? And I cried when I wrote it.
Yeah.
When I talk about the book, if it's just very emotional to talk about, not because, listen, everything that's ever happened to me created who I am today. I wouldn't be Tony sitting in front of you right now if I wasn't sexually abused, if I didn't do self-harm. A lot of people say, what? You're wishing? I'm not wishing that, but it freaking happened.
Yeah.
I can't wish it away. So I might as well say, wow, you're a blueprint of everything that's ever happened to you.
And when you're sitting in that moment with a kid in crisis, that informs your actions, your kindness, your behavior, which changes the lives of these kids. So you're absolutely right. You would never wish that kind of trauma on somebody, but if you survive, the power it can give you.
You're a survivor. Everything that's ever happened to you, you're sitting here, you survived it.
I'm still here.
And you're productive, and you're giving a safe space for people to come in and talk about their deepest pains. And I'm telling you, Claire, and I've told you this before, your energy is so safe. So just know, I mean, you aren't in the room with us, but you kind of are in the room with us. She's safe. That's all I'm saying.
Thank you, Tony. Appreciate that. One of the things that is, again, kind of stereotypical about LGBTQ folks and trans people in particular, that 2015 trans survey and the new one from 2022 points to, is that trans kids and trans people in general are at risk for drug abuse, for alcohol abuse, for all kinds of abuse, self-harm, smoking. It's much more than just drugs and alcohol. To that end, I was wondering if I could get you to read on page 45. I just want to point this out to you. This is how much I enjoyed your book.
It's coffee stains.
There's coffee stains on it. Yeah, look at that.
That's amazing.
I was drinking. Well,
what were you drinking?
Coffee, decaf.
Okay.
I only ever do decaf.
Okay, me too. At the end of most Coke nights, my heart would race so bad, I'd be like, fuck, I'm going to die. And then I would have to make a list. And my list was always my dreams of who I really wanted to be. Like what I really wanted because I didn't want the life that I was living. I definitely didn't want to be a drug dealer and a cokehead. I wanted to be like everyone else. I sat outside where there was a lot of traffic. I would watch people drive by me and I would think to myself, look at their life. They're probably going to work. They have jobs. They have people who love them. That's who I want to be. I want to be somebody who is not who I am. Coke brought out my dreams. In an altered state, dreams seemed possible. Remember, you can't dream when you are suffering and struggling to survive.
And that last sentence is what I was talking about before.
Yeah.
You're going along in your narrative. This happened. I did this, and then you bring it home to the reader. Remember, you can't dream.
You can't dream. It's impossible to dream when you're suffering and trying to survive.
There's no future. Yeah. Dreams are about the future. That spoke to me about being fully present. And I think we both know that our best decisions get made when we're fully present. And this kind of came off of what you were saying. That's what I try to do with this show is I sit with somebody and I want to know their story. And to facilitate that, I try to be fully present with them.
And you do a great job with that.
Oh, thank you. But you can't do that if you're whatever percentage of your brain, probably in the 80s or 90s, is focused on just survival and just on the pain. You can't do that.
There's so many times during the day when I always ask myself, is that true? Get out of your head, live in your heart. Your heart will never lie to you. And it's a big difference. I know when I'm living in my head, and thank God I have people around me that say, hey, Tone, you're kind of living in your head, man. You're going to feel a lot better if you go back and live in your heart.
I remember once saying to one of my uncles, he was a former smoker, and at the time I was smoking, and it just, without even thinking about it, I said to him, I do this because it's socially acceptable suicide, and ha ha ha, very funny.
Yeah,
I wasn't joking.
Yeah,
like I would love to end this, and I don't have the courage to do it yet. Yeah. So I'm doing it by attrition.
Wow. Yeah.
And I played it off as joke, which is what I always do.
Yep.
But there was a lot of truth in that moment. I'm assuming there was some degree of that with your drug use.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think I really knew that, but I didn't give a shit if I died or not until I talk about the time I thought I was having a heart attack and my niece was born, like my first niece.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That was a compelling story, Tony.
Yeah, that was really, it was. I did not want her to know me as the uncle that died young from drugs. I couldn't do that. But what really stopped the drug use is when I started working with kids. I mean, I stopped the coke, stopped dealing coke, and then I was just like dealing other stuff. But everything stopped because I sat in my apartment, I was getting stoned, and I said, what are you doing, dude? Like, if anything ever happens to you, if you die from that, if you get some bad shit, or you get caught by a cop and you get arrested, or you die in a car accident because you're so fucking high and you're driving, you're a role model now.
And that's going to be the headline.
Yeah.
Right?
Oh, absolutely. They're going to forget everything I've ever done that was good, and it's going to be this drug dealer was working with kids. What a schmo, So I called my therapist at the time, Jim Collins, because I had a bag of pot. This is no lie. And I said, listen. I said, I can't do this. And I started talking to him. I was like having an anxiety attack about it because I was almost living the death. I was almost living the arrest in my head and really feeling what they would feel.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So he says, get up. And where's the bag? I said, it's sitting right in front of me. He says, get up and go into the bathroom. And I was like, I think I know what you're going to say. And I don't know if I want to do it. Can I just sell it? He was like, no, you can't sell it. but I could get $45 for it.
Right.
I mean, come on. Anyway, so I went into the bathroom. I poured it all in the toilet, and I flushed the toilet. I have not touched anything since then. I don't even drink anymore. I don't even socially drink anymore. I mean, I'm just like, just because it's just like doesn't do me any favors. It doesn't make me feel good.
There's that sort of external stimulus of, what are they going to write about in the paper? Or how is that going to look on the 6 o'clock news? But you sit in intimacy with kids in crisis. Yeah. And regardless of what they know or don't know, in that moment, you know who you are.
Yeah.
And to be fully present, to be, I'm going to use the word pure, that's how that moment works. That moment doesn't work if you're not fully present with them.
Yeah. But I really felt like what they would feel. I remember when I was going to become a certified life coach, Holly McCallan, I don't know if you know who Robin McCallan is. Well, it's Robin McCallan's wife. Robin McCallan founded True Colors, right? But her wife, Holly, was a life. I didn't know she was a life coach, and I was at a conference, and you can raffle off for a free coaching session. So I said, what the hell? And she calls me, and I said, did I win? She says, no. But
well, good talking to you.
Yeah. She says, but listen, I was wondering if you would like train me and talk to me about trans non-binary cultural competency in return for like barter, some life coaching stuff. So I said, sure. So I started talking to my friend Rachel, and I said, I wish I was younger. I wish I'd become a social worker. I want to do more for these kids. And Rachel says, why don't you just become a life coach? And I was like, I never thought about that. So I started talking to Holly. Holly helped me so much, moved me forward so quickly that I went to IPEC coaching and got my coaching certification in 2010. Well, it took a year and a half to get it. But in 2010, I was certified. Life-changing. So when I sit with a child now, I'm a different person. And I know that I have to be present and in the moment with them, but I also know that when I walk away from them, I have to leave it where it is. And that was hard for me. I remember walking into a psych hospital room with a kid that was starving themselves to death. I didn't even recognize him. He was like just bones in a bed. And I sat there and I talked to him. He was laughing, and we got him to eat. Eventually he got out of the hospital. He's fine. But that moment when I walked out of the room that day, I literally felt my back. Like I visualized my back walking away. I can't hold on to, I was doing that. I was holding on to these things 24/7 and I was burning out. So, if you're doing this work or you want to do this work, great. But balance. Honestly, like that was a big lesson I learned, because I kind of like burnt out for a little while. I stopped coaching for 2 years because I just couldn't handle I felt responsible for their lives. And that's not what it is. Especially when you're working with a population that you were once in. Like I was once a trans kid, though I didn't know it back then. It's so hard to, like, when people say, I want to become a life coach, what's your niche? I said, well, trans and non-binary, queer youth, high risk of suicide and self-harm. I said, it's hard because majority of the time, if you're coaching a young teenager, you can do everything for them. They can be moving forward and something can happen and boom, they're back in the hospital. Or they have a suicide attempt. I had to stop taking that personally. Like, I'm not good enough. I didn't do something.
It's not a failure on your part.
It's not a failure. No, it's not a failure on their part either. No, it's just something that happened. IPEC never had a trans person, never mind somebody who wanted to work with trans people. So I was their first trans person that became a certified life coach. I learned all this stuff on my own. Like nobody said to me, okay, listen, this is how you have support groups and this is what you say. And there wasn't anybody. It's not a taught thing,
I mean, there again, back in the day, any sort of approach would have been, okay, well, how can we help you out of this? How can we make you normal?
We don't want to help you go down the journey that you're on. Yeah. We're going to shift that journey to make us help you. Yeah, I get you. Yeah,
something that's more socially acceptable. In terms of recovery, there's an element of spirituality, of God.
Yeah, I talk about that's a powerful story, I think. I had a forced relationship with God growing up. My parents raised us Catholic. I remember sometimes we would walk to church without them. They wouldn't come, but we had to go. And I would say this a lot, and not to like a priest or anything like that, but I would say to people, what God would put a kid through what I went through? What God could do that to a child? So I stopped believing. That's why I used to say, I don't believe in God, I don't believe in God, I don't believe in God. Then I met Michelle, a friend of mine, and she said to me, what's your spirituality? Do you believe in God? Because she believes in God. I said, I don't believe in God. And I said, I don't want to talk about it because religion was something I did not want to discuss. And a couple of months later, she asked again. I was in a better space. And I said to her, what God would put a kid through all this? And she said, Tony, did you ever think that maybe you didn't stop believing in God, that maybe you stopped having faith in God? And I said, you're right. Absolutely right. Because every time I said I didn't believe in God, I didn't feel right about it.
So draw that distinction for me. What's the difference between I don't believe and I don't have faith?
Well, when I didn't believe, I didn't even believe that God existed. Having faith is different. Like I felt like, he kind of let me down here, dude, or dudette, or they, them. I don't know how they identify. But God, you let me down. Why? And then Michelle said to me, have you ever thought that maybe, and every time I say this, I'm going to get emotional. It really hits my heart that God was setting you up to do the work you do today with the kids. Maybe that was all the suffering. He was setting you up to save lives, Tony. And now I believe that, Claire. It was easy for me to accept the pain of my past when I knew it was for a purpose.
So there's a degree of comfort in that.
It was a huge degree of comfort because when you're pain, when you can't find, like I'm not telling everybody now to go out and try to figure out pain, the purpose of their pain. But for me, that God connection really made a profound difference.
You said this jokingly at the beginning of that story, but when you close your eyes to meditate, do you picture someone?
No. A lot of people who are religious say they can't meditate because they're too religious. And I always try to remind them that praying is when you're talking to God, meditating is when you're listening to him. Okay?
Oh, I like that.
So when I ask a question, like I've always done this, I've always asked hard questions in silence, and because when we sit in the silence and we allow the answers to come, because we have the answers, but when we allow them to come, it's usually in the silence because there's no distraction. You might not like the answer, and then it's up to you to accept the answer, but that's how I feel about God and listen, I'm spiritual and religious. You know what I mean? Okay. I'm it's not one or the other. Do you know Reverend Aaron Miller?
Oh, yes.
Okay, so Aaron and I are very good friends.
Great respect for him.
Yeah. He's amazing. We don't talk about God. And that was because when I first met him, I didn't believe in God. And we had an agreement that we would not discuss religion or anything because we can talk about a lot of other things. But every time we go out to dinner, he says a quick thank God for the food or whatever before he eats, and every time we go out, I start blah blah blah, and then I look at him, and he's like praying over his food, and I'm like, oh shit, sorry.
Yeah. There was another quote at the beginning of chapter 13, the first paragraph.
The first and hardest step for me was to stop listening to the people who said they knew me better than I knew myself, and there were so many. My mind was filled with untruths. Some of them, most crippling false beliefs, was that I was stupid or ugly, that I shouldn't be alive, that I should die, that people's lives would be better off if I wasn't around. These words and thoughts echoed in my mind and really prevented me from living a happy life.
The H word.
Yeah, the H word.
That triggered in my mind a quote from, I can't remember which one of her books it is, but Jenny Finney Boylan, who is one of my trans heroes.
Yeah.
I feel like somebody who just got out of prison after 40 years for something she didn't do. Like I got pardoned by the governor. And when dear friends deal with me with mixed pronouns, it's a little like being told, well, Jenny, we're glad you got sprung, really. But quite honestly, we did kind of like you better when you were in jail. And that sense of, that people have this constricted by their own experiences view of who you are and therefore who you should be.
Yeah.
And when that curveball of I'm not the gender you thought I was, that it can be hard for them to accept and set aside those preconceptions.
Yeah. But I heard that all my whole life, that I was ugly, fat, stupid. Listen, if the voice inside of you is not speaking to your greatness, it's not your voice. It's the voice of somebody who has abused you or said something really off-color to you in the past. It doesn't have to be something that you're close to, but it's something that really hit you and that you hold.
To just bring it full circle, that's being trapped.
Yeah.
Right? That person is trapped in their mindset of what you should be, of what the gender structure should be according to them.
Yeah, reset the mindset, man. I still feel sometimes that I'm ugly and I'm not attractive. It's hard, and I think I said this in the book. When I do go back to those moments of, am I good enough? Am I too ugly? I don't do it with any type of blame or shame. I actually comfort myself afterwards. The question, is that true? Powerful question. I ask myself that when I start getting into that mindset. I'm like, is that true? But I say it with kindness, because self-kindness is so important. We're always told to be kind to others. How can you talk to somebody like that? You got to be kind to them. But nobody ever says, be kind to yourself. How are you being kind to yourself? You're not being kind to yourself. You're sitting there calling yourself an asshole. That's for sure. Like, oh, you're such an asshole. How can you do that? Whoa. I do that all the time. Well, I do it less now than I used to.
I fall into that with alarming ease, just self-loathing, self-defeating. I am also getting better at catching myself at it and finding, okay, there are things you can do when you're feeling that way that'll pull you out of it. I did that when I was writing. The first time I got this opportunity to write a short story for an anthology, I wrote about 1,500 words, and I thought I had crafted this. I did craft this lovely scene between two characters, and I sent it to a friend, and I said, okay, what do you think? And she said, well, that's great, but you were asked for 10,000 words. And I just slipped immediately into, I'm not good enough to do that. I don't have those
Whose voice
skills.
Is that?
And then it just amazingly quickly spiraled into comments about my physical appearance and my weight. I mean, it lasted about 2 months, and I realized I'm just beating the hell out of myself.
That's how it was with the book, too. I can't tell you how many times I said, I'm not going to be able to write this. I'm not going to be able to write this. And Publisher Purpose they have an author's event every year. And I'm sitting there, and this guy was on stage. He was an author, wrote his memoir, and he said, I was stuck. I was like, how the hell am I going to do this? How am I going to know what to write? He says, then I said to myself, wait a minute. I'll just write one story at a time. When I was writing Artistic Expressions, I didn't write a lot in that book. Most of it are kids' drawings, but I was still stuck because I didn't think I was good enough or smart enough to do it. And I was walking through New York with Drew Levisser,
Yep.
And Drew said to me, just write one sentence a day. It'll get done eventually. When you make it not as big as you think it is, you keep it really in the moment. What can I do today? I got in my own way a lot when I was writing this.
And did you just walk away for a bit and come back?
Yeah, I had to. I mean, #therapy forever. I mean, my therapist was on speed dial when I was writing this because the pain comes back.
When it comes out, I assume there will be, say, a book tour. There will be a series of interviews and conversations, not unlike this one. Are you going to be able to revisit these things and keep yourself safe?
Yes, absolutely. #therapy forever. No, I'm kidding. I've already contacted every single university I've ever spoke to, every podcast I've ever been on, every, or like NBC, Universal, everybody, and let them know book's coming out, do an author's talk. I'm offering deals to book clubs. If they order 10 or more, I'll go and do a free talk with them. So I'm really, I was a promoter back in my day, so I kind of have that in my blood.
But I wish you nothing but the best with this, Tony.
Thank you.
This is a story people should be reading. Last words are yours. Tell people why they should buy this book.
I really, really would want people who really want to hear my story. A lot of people are curious about my journey, but also to help guide them if they are even struggling a little bit with something. The power of healing is within you. And I hope this book helps them through that.
I'll put links in the show notes so you can buy a copy of this book. Tony's having a book signing and Q&A at the Barnes & Noble in North Haven on Sunday, November 17th at 1:30. I'll be offering my Trans 101 presentation on Wednesday the 13th at Scranton Public Library in Madison, Connecticut. Oops, almost said Madison, Wisconsin there, but I forgot I don't live in a swing state. Next on Transqat, 50 states, 14,000 volunteers, and a mission anybody can understand. Since 2015, the group known as Free Mom Hugs has been an integral part